Transmigrated as a disabled protagonist, how should I continue the script? Chapter 36, Sharing a Bed. The Vongala family brought good news and also formed a favorable relationship with the Port Mafia. The two sides parted ways with mutual satisfaction. At the same time, Mori Ogai learned about Dazai Osamu's ranking content and specifically used his connections to find the top 3 ranked individuals. 1 search or 3 search, it was still a search. With the Port Mafia's power, even though it was weakened, being greater than a horse, its efficiency naturally far surpassed that of the government. Before Dazai Osamu could even wait for the next step in collaboration with the Special Division, he was already lured away by Mori-san's bait. In the dark, 2 lonely boys sat down obediently. The difference is that Dazai Osamu is pretending to be obedient, while Yakimaru is truly obedient, showing complete restraint towards his father-in-law. No matter how disgusting, he is still the father-in-law. Work and life are 2 separate matters, and Mori Ogai recently has been enjoying continuous happy events, stabilizing his hairline, gaining both a daughter and a son-in-law. Most importantly, making these 2 behave so well brings a great sense of accomplishment. Dazai-kun, to get this piece of information, you'll have to understand the price you need to pay. Mori-san is a good person. Ah, this is the first time I've heard Dazai-kun compliment me. If Mori-san likes it, I can repeat it 100 times for you. Just give me the information. How about you repeat it 100 times first? No need. 1 big and 1 small were disgustingly cheerful, which didn't quite match with Yakimaru's pure and somewhat confused expression. What are these 2 excited about? Rintaro, if you want to have a teacher-student relationship, at least don't do it in front of me. I recall your hunting range was for those under 12, not 14, right? Elise's hand, which was drawing with crayons, trembled, making a crooked line. Mori Ogai immediately straightened up. Elise, it's because of Dazai-kun that I've gone astray. You're a teacher-con, so becoming a disciple-con wouldn't be strange. Elise looked at him with disdain. Mori Ogai, sharing a connection with her, adjusted his posture. His expression, like that of a vampire with purple eyes, was veiled in deceitful gentleness. The current boss of the Port Mafia, looking at the future capable subordinate he had set his sights on, smiled. Dazai-kun, the conflicts in Yokohama end here. GSS, ha. Dazai Osamu raised his pale, delicate face, and his refined features revealed a hint of coldness. As long as the last foothold of a certain organization is eliminated swiftly, Yokohama can temporarily return to peace. Mori-san can focus on handling the internal faction conflicts within the Port Mafia, and I can obtain the most crucial intel without being repeatedly forced into labor by the Special Division. This is a deal beneficial to both sides. He thought so, and for the first time, his gaze didn't turn toward Yakimaru's side. The memory returns to the moment of the Vongala family gathering that noon, when the 10-year bazooka unexpectedly appeared, bringing a 10 years later Yakimaru from a parallel world. During the hour they spent together afterward, aside from initially asking about his identity, the other party did not reveal any further information. Even the best psychological experts would find it difficult to perfectly analyze a completely closed-off puppet, but to someone like Dazai Osamu, who was familiar with him, every move the other party made was the most important piece of intelligence. Are you my Dororo? 10 years later, Yakimaru asked, revealing that in the future he would have no further contact with Yakimaru, and had sent Yakimaru to another faction, the most likely one being the armed detective agency. Besides me, could there be a second Dororo? That's how Dazai Osamu responded to the other party. The fleeting joy and sorrow in the 10 years later Yakimaru's eyes did not escape his notice. A sense of foreboding rose within him, perhaps he had not led him astray successfully. Can you tell me about the future? Dazai Osamu asked 10 years later Yakimaru, only to be stopped by the Vongala family. Reborn's intention is to avoid interfering with parallel worlds as much as possible, or walking through them to gather intel on the future. Every individual who does this will unconsciously cause dangerous accidents. Similar to how parallel worlds protect themselves, they reject anything that does not naturally belong to them. Later, Dazai Osamu took the 10 years later Yakimaru into a guest room alone. The puppet, even after becoming an adult, remained quiet and silent, and did not resist when his hand was pulled. After a partial examination, he discovered that the 10 years later Yakimaru still hadn't regained his real right leg, and his entire body was covered with terrifyingly high-precision prosthetics and artificial skin. This greatly exceeded Dazai Osamu's expectations. He thought Yakimaru, being so stubborn, would keep pestering Suribachi Street Chuya until he pestered a new organ into existence. Why was it like this? Had some different event occurred in between? In theory, it wasn't difficult for Yakimaru to find the Sheep King within the same city, unless he was obstructed. Taking the situation from a few months ago, there were only a few people capable of preventing Yakimaru from encountering Nakahara Chuya. One was Nakahara Chuya himself, avoiding Yakimaru. Another was Edogawa Ranpo, who saw through the truth of the pursuit and stopped Yakimaru. Then there was Mori-san, who taken Nakahara Chuya early on, keeping him too occupied to appear in public. And lastly, there was him, involved in the conflict between Yakimaru and Nakahara Chuya, creating a rift between the two. Dazai Osamu looked at the grown-up Yakimaru, while the 24-year-old Yakimaru, with his appearance restored by advanced technology, also looked back at him. Handsome and sharp, his brown-gray eyes carried a heavy sense of death, reflecting a deep appreciation for time. The weak puppet is still weak, endearing and lovable, yet has matured into a sharp sword that can sheath itself. How beautiful it is! Dazai Osamu's heart was gnawed by unfamiliar emotions. But there's not a trace of me left on you. Not even a little. Was it me who abandoned you? Or is it that you no longer need me? Having agreed to Mori-san's request, Dazai Osamu remained entangled in his unresolved inner conflict. His rational mind leaned towards the version of himself from another timeline, the one who voluntarily left Yakimaru, while his emotions leaned toward the idea that Yakimaru no longer needed him. Mori Ogai had no idea what this brat had been brooding over lately, but having picked up on a clue, he took on the role of a psychological counselor for a while. He handed Dazai Osamu a steaming hot bowl of chicken soup. Emotions are a wonderful thing, but when you're in the middle of them, it's hard to see the problems. If there's something you don't understand between you and Yaki-kun, it wouldn't hurt to separate for a while and take some time to calm down. If Yaki-kun can't understand you, all the efforts you make for him will just end up being something that only moves yourself. Mori Ogai's ahoge lifted slightly as he shared his life experience. But he had forgotten. That girl he had raised hated him so much, her feelings toward him were nothing but the urge to raise her middle finger. Is Dororo upset? Was she scolded by her father? Yakimaru sat still, not moving, and turned his gaze toward Dazai Osamu, his half-revealing eyes betraying his thoughts. The gray-brown pupils seemed to clearly see the other person, gaining a bit of spirituality under the support of illusion. Within his mind, the pure white flame appeared as though doused with cold water, wilting for a moment. Jukai had always been gentle to Yakimaru like a mother, causing Yakimaru to never experience any reprimand from his family. Even in the most tragic circumstances, he held on to a warm memory. It wasn't hard for him to imagine that feeling, and he quickly decided to take advantage of his blind and deaf status to pull Dororo down from the chair. If you're not happy, I can only make you leave the place that brings you unhappiness. All the scolding directed at him was irrelevant. He couldn't hear it. Yakimaru demonstrated through his actions that he liked Dororo, and was willing to be the other's shield. His extraordinary combat skills were the only thing he could rely on as he wandered through this chaotic world. Hearing the room door slam shut, Mori Ogai blinked in surprise. Was he disliked again? He turned to Elise and said, "Did Yaki-kun see me as the bad guy? I haven't done anything bad." Elise responded, "Rin Taro, maybe you should reflect a little, don't you think?" Without hearing a reply, the blonde little girl added the final stroke to her drawing. What appeared were two crooked stick figures, one with black hair, the other with brown, radiating white light from a colorful, twisted background. "You look like a wicked old lady." Mori Ogai opened his mouth, speaking with difficulty. "I thought in Yaki-kun's mind, I had a different role. Like, say, a father-in-law." For a moment, the clinic was filled with Elisa's silvery laughter. In the hospital room where no one was sick, Yakimaru pulled Dazai-Osamu inside and immediately shut the door, leaning his back against it to prevent anyone from opening it from the outside. Dazai-Osamu's negative emotions were completely dispelled by the extreme honesty of the other's protective intentions. He couldn't stop laughing, but his throat accidentally caught on his breath, causing him to cough a few times. Haha, Yakimaru. Cough, did you misunderstand something? Mori-san didn't bully me. To be precise, Mori Ogai's actions perfectly aligned with Dazai-Osamu's expectations. He was a qualified mentor. However, Yakimaru's view of the world was different. He only has himself. A bland life full of surprises. After Dazai-Osamu stopped coughing, his eyes showed a trace of warmth. If our meeting is a game, at the crossroads of life, is it that I failed to capture you, or that you failed to capture me? How terrible. Why is it that someone like you, who I can't stand, exists? Looking at you, I can't help but feel that this world isn't entirely hopeless. After all, someone like you, so desperate to exist, holding nothing back for survival. You must truly want to see the world. He looked at the height difference between the two. Yakimaru was tall, and he couldn't keep up with his speed, being barely 1.6 meters himself. He didn't know when he would finally be able to finish assembling this beautiful puppet, and then hug the other person tightly, squeezing that soft face until it turned red, making the other call out, "Master," this type of amusing name. Raising something occasionally gives temporary satisfaction, but constantly raising something always brings joy. Dazai-Osamu, without anything on him, stuffed the complete suicide into Yakimaru's hands. Take it. Yakimaru, unsure of what to do, stroked the object. It wasn't food. Was this a gift from Dororo to him? Dororo? Take it with you when you go out, I'll be a bit busy in the future. Dazai-Osamu thoroughly prepared for emergencies, writing his contact number on the inside cover of the book to avoid losing his puppet and being unable to find it even if it was discovered by a kind-hearted person. In the closed hospital room, the smell of disinfectant became an indispensable part of Dazai-Osamu's youthful memories. He smiled and said, "I'm not studying the methods of death at the moment. Your life. Let me borrow it for a while, Yakimaru." Late at night, having received the engagement token, Yakimaru lay on the hospital bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. He took out the book from under his pillow, and although he couldn't really read it, he still appeared serious, as if he were reading. The pages made a faint rustling sound. Dazai-Osamu was a light sleeper, and being continuously disturbed, he grew quite irritated. He decisively climbed over to the adjacent bed, snatched the book, and tossed it onto a nearby shelf, some distance away from them. He paid no attention to Yakimaru's wronged expression as he stared blankly. Just when he was about to crawl back into his own bed, Yakimaru tugged on the corner of his shirt and, still half asleep, Dazai-Osamu asked, "You can't sleep?" He still needed to gather his energy tomorrow to deal with GSS, so his brain required proper relaxation to face those people and the situation. "Never mind, I want to sleep." Dazai-Osamu used Yakimaru's prosthetic arm as a pillow, pulled up the blanket, covered his head, and indulged in the warmth of the bedding. In no time, he fell asleep effortlessly. The good thing about having a puppet is that it can serve as a sleeping pillow, and the other party won't fidget or get warm. At this moment, the ancient mind Yakimaru was left stunned. Is Dororo this enthusiastic? Dororo and he sleeping together? In ancient times, even in a fictional setting like the Sengoku period, an unmarried woman wouldn't be able to be this intimate with a man. Only during his childhood did he share a bed with his adoptive father, and now Yakimaru's body stiffened, breathing in shallow intervals, suppressing the rapid thumping of his heart, afraid to disturb the small bundle of warmth that was Dororo. "You're really noisy," Dazai-Osamu murmured in his sleep. Yakimaru couldn't hear him, but he pulled the blanket down slightly for her, worried she might get too hot. After that, he lay back down, calming himself. Chapter 36 End. Chapter 37, Completing the Mission. In the GSS matter, Nakahara Chuya was indirectly dragged into the battle. Dazai Osamu, holding the Silver God's decree, could command both the executives and lower-ranked members of the Port Mafia. Instead of meeting Mori Ogai's subordinates, he first went to find Nakahara Chuya in Suribachi Street. As soon as Nakahara Chuya saw him, he immediately suspected trouble and tried to run, but Dazai Osamu called back. "If you take one more step, those little sheeps will get into trouble." Huh? He felt that if he didn't go, those little sheeps would definitely be devoured by this grey wolf. Vexing Dazai Osamu excelled in digging pits for others, Nakahara Chuya's feet still stopped against his brain's wishes. With his hands stuffed into his hoodie pockets and his hood pulled low to conceal his face, he gloomily glared at Dazai Osamu, exuding a truly menacing aura. "You're not going to get out of this without explaining yourself, or you won't be walking back alive." Oh, how terrifying. Dazai Osamu spoke with mock grandeur and then strolled away on his own, adopting a completely carefree attitude. Cursing under his breath, Nakahara Chuya followed behind. Along the way, Nakahara Chuya couldn't help but ask where Yakimaru was, to which Dazai Osamu casually responded, "Once everything is settled, you'll see us at a sushi restaurant booth." Nakahara Chuya was furious, wondering why he was the one betrayed while this filthy guy covered in mud was happily bouncing around. If he wasn't wandering the streets with Yakimaru looking for fun, he was out enjoying gourmet food with someone else's money. Suddenly, Nakahara Chuya slowed his pace, lowering his voice in a rough tone. "Hey, I wanted to ask you last time, did you join the Port Mafia?" "Yeah." Yakimaru agree. "Why do you want him to agree?" "I can easily solve these issues without killing anyone." People with low intelligence, like the dwarf, can't understand the mindset of those with high intelligence, full of boredom in their spiritual world. "Aren't you ashamed?" Nakahara Chuya had seen enough of his narcissism and felt at ease. At least he wasn't going to kill anyone. Dazai Osamu paused and pointed to a nearby amusement park, saying, "Do you dare to play a game? The loser has to follow whatever the winner says. I don't want someone ignoring commands and acting recklessly." Nakahara Chuya said irritably, "Why do you like to mumble incoherently out of the blue? You didn't even explain the situation clearly, and you expect me to listen?" "No, even if you did explain it clearly, I would still have my own plan of action. My people don't need you to save." "You still have people?" Dazai Osamu asked cruelly in return. Nakahara Chuya moved toward the direction of the amusement park, determined to prove he would defeat him. For several consecutive days, Dazai Osamu came and went without a trace, and Yakimaru saw him less and less. When he chased after him out the door, he couldn't find Dazai Osamu's life flame. If Yakimaru were the type to give up easily, that would be one thing, but he wasn't. Since he couldn't see his Dororo, he simply went out every day to search for Dororo, and while searching along the way, he conveniently hunted down evil creatures, returning home each evening at dusk. Mori Ogai watched as if it were a show, finding the interactions between the two young boys quite amusing. Because Yakimaru was carrying the book from Dazai Osamu, some well-intentioned people who could approach him realized he was blind and deaf, and upon seeing the name on the book, they would become alert. "What? The complete suicide? Are you planning to kill yourself?" Through these people offering help, Yakimaru would often be stopped by someone. Right after, while busy with his own affairs, Dazai Osamu would receive a call, "All right, I understand. You don't need to interfere with him, I'll bring him back right away." Nakahara Chuya rolled his eyes countless times as he overheard the phone conversation beside him, waiting until the call ended before speaking. "Why don't I see you going for him? He'll come back on his own, he hasn't left the safe zone yet." Dazai Osamu pressed frantically on his phone, pulling up the tracking map, confirming that Yakimaru had returned to the clinic. The Port Mafia, rooted in Yokohama, was a local power. Mori-san still thought Yakimaru was useful, so he sent people to monitor his movements, but truthfully, he doesn't need to worry about Yakimaru. Super semi-automatic puppet. Dazai Osamu boasted to Nakahara Chuya. "He's a person, not a puppet," Nakahara Chiya said coldly. Mine. Dazai Osamu didn't bother looking at Chiya, who was stomping his feet in frustration. Don't even think about making him your target. You lost the game, so listen obediently. Stop asking me about the puppet. Nakahara Chiya gritted his teeth, thinking to himself, Yakimaru, this is the good person in your eyes. Even I'm better than him. From Nakahara Chiya's side, Dazai Osamu had gathered all the intel on the sheep. Those youths who joined GSS in 2 waves weren't ability users, they had all relied on Nakahara Chiya's strength to show off before. The main reason GSS recruited them was to get Nakahara Chiya to join their organization. Nakahara Chiya, the master of gravity manipulation, ranked by ranking Futa as the strongest youth fighter in Yokohama. If Vongala family's Decimo heir really fought against him, Sawada Tsunayoshi would probably just cry, completely out of his league. The sky flame could not restrain the power of Arahabaki. Nakahara Chiya was already an influential figure capable of shifting the course of battle. Chiya. Out of nowhere, Dazai Osamu flashed a sly, devious smile. Nakahara Chiya, what is it? After a week of planning, Dazai Osamu discovered a shortcut to eliminate GSS. The sheep haven't fully mingled with the official members of GSS yet, but they surely know information about GSS's weapon stockpiles and high-ranking members. If you can convince them to betray GSS, it could save us a lot of effort. Nakahara Chiya coldly rejected, if I could convince them, would you still see me alone? Dazai Osamu teased, why don't you try joining the GSS? Nakahara Chiya immediately swung a kick, shouting, do you think I'm as shameless as you? Dazai Osamu dodged and said, I can only use my own methods. Nakahara Chiya's anger suddenly subsided. What method? For a moment, the boy saw the same indifference on Dazai Osamu's face, the expression of a hunter ready to tighten the net, showing no mercy to his prey. He sighed in defeat, remember what you said, no killing, and don't harm any former sheep members. Yakimaru couldn't bear those who have killed. As if recalling a crucial point, Dazai Osamu's indifferent attitude faded, returning to his usual humorous demeanor. How could I dirty my hands for those trash? Ha! Sorry, you were part of those trash before. Oops, accidentally insulted myself. Nakahara Chiya covered his face. 2 days later, Dazai Osamu, using the power of the Silver God's decree persuasion, mobilized the Port Mafia's armed forces to launch a full-scale operation to eliminate the GSS, which was made up of soldiers and mercenaries. Nakahara Chiya, helpless to ensure the safety of the sheep, was forced to join forces with him. Immediately, rumors spread across Suribachi Street that Nakahara Chiya had joined the Port Mafia. The entire GSS organization disappeared from Yokohama under Dazai Osamu's solo operation. The sheep had suffered a huge blow and returned to Suribachi Street, leaving Nakahara Chiya unsure whether to feel relief or worry. Could the broken trust be mended once again? Nakahara Chiya didn't know, feeling extremely sorrowful for this sheep king. On the other side, Dazai Osamu went to Mori-san to get the mission rewards. Mori Ogai clapped his hands and said, Dazai-kun, as your first mission after joining the Port Mafia, you've done exceptionally well, eliminating an unstable organization in Yokohama without much effort. Dazai Osamu, dissatisfied, brushed off the business exchange and bluntly said, Mori-san, intel on 3 individuals. Mori Ogai smiled faintly, opened the drawer, and handed over the items he'd long prepared. Don't be in a rush, this is destined to be yours. Dazai Osamu lowered his head to examine them, flipping through at an extremely fast pace. In no time, he had reviewed all the information collected by the Port Mafia, committing it to memory, planning to rest for a few days before looking for the method of restoration. Mori Ogai, while observing his concentration, casually remarked, I heard from the armed force that many people died in this operation, most of the GSS members perished. Dazai Osamu said, isn't this exactly what Mori-san wanted to see? The remaining children aren't worth worrying about. Mori Ogai replied with a calm face, I thought you would be a bit more patient. Dazai Osamu laughed and said, there's not much time left, Yakimaru is about to find GSS, but I haven't killed a single person. They either die by killing each other or are killed by the armed forces. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just the guardian saving the city's peace and stability. Do as you please. Mori Ogai smiled. Planning to go back and enjoy a feast with Yakimaru, Dazai Osamu bid farewell to the boss in Mori Ogai's office. The door of the boss's office closed. Under the dimming lights, sitting behind the desk, Mori Ogai smiled with an icy chill. Elise, young boys are really great, seeing them makes me think back to that age. It's a pity Chiyokuin couldn't join the port mafia on the first try. I'm just one step short of a deadly blow. Exactly. A blonde girl appeared behind Mori Ogai, wrapping her arms around his neck and standing on tiptoe. She smiled together with him. It's like Dazai-kun said, for Yokohama, for stability, they are the guardians of peace in the shadows, and anyone who tries to disrupt the balance is an enemy of the port mafia. I forgot to tell Dazai-kun something, but it doesn't matter. He'll know soon enough. Who made him so similar to me? Rin Taro, I want to eat a tangerine-flavored cake. Alright. Dazai Osamu, due to some psychological factors, intentionally returned to the clinic before going to meet Yakimaru. After taking a shower, he put on clean clothes and threw his sweltering black coat onto the coat rack. He checked his phone's location, left with his hair half dry, and didn't want Yakimaru to see his right after work image. Occasionally, his puppet would still seek him out during the day. Yakimaru didn't know how many shady places and monsters in Yokohama had been eradicated, carrying his books and making frequent phone calls. It's time to give him a surprise, so they wouldn't have to sleep tightly together every night. Dazai Osamu, with a pleasant demeanor, showed not the slightest sign of being someone who had been through 2 organization conflicts. To him, everyone else was merely like stones by the roadside. Once again. When Yakimaru went to the Tsurumi River area where they first encountered, he firmly felt that there were even more monsters in the water. Unfortunately, he was unable to dive into the deeper areas, and when he wanted to catch fish to eat, he feared being caught by Dororo. Dororo doesn't like it when I eat raw things. From now on, I have to eat cooked food. The black-haired youth, on one side, was slaughtering invisible creatures unseen by the human eye, while on the other, searching for Dororo. He was completely unaware of the many fearful gazes that gradually shifted into one of curiosity and friendliness toward an ability user. It was simple, his body was enveloped in Rokudo Mukuro's illusions. Every time he pulled out his arm, revealing the sword of a warrior, it seemed like a display of some kind of impressive ability rather than a terrifying consequence of his incomplete body. Humans are a species that judge by appearances. Yakimaru's mask, crafted by a master, and his cold demeanor added to his aura, naturally attracting people who would come to like him. The crowd gradually increased along the roadside, and he moved toward the less crowded areas, trying to keep to remote paths. His mind worked hard to memorize the route so that he could return home every evening at dusk. That ordinary clinic had become Yakimaru's second home, no longer just a place to rest. Because, every time, he could see Dororo returning from outside. He wasn't satisfied with this. He was even a little worried about Dororo's situation. Recently, a gray mist had surrounded the pure white flame of life, indicating that Dororo had encountered some trouble. At night, only when Yakimaru embraced the other person, would the darkness slightly fade away. Dororo, where were you during the day? Yakimaru searched for that one unique flame along the dark road, ignoring those who tried to approach him. No one else would ever take his hand, guide him into the crowd, and accompany him in vanquishing evil spirits. On the other side of the river. Dazai Osamu pinpointed it precisely, found you. He quickened his pace around the riverbank, smiling as he sought out Yakimaru. His eyes gleamed more beautifully than the surface of the lake, his entire being completely without the aura of darkness, resembling an ordinary young man simply looking for a friend. Yakimaru. Each time he said something like that, he would receive an instinctive response from the other person, and then he would take the lead himself. Let's have crab sushi tonight, I found a place that tastes good, Dazai-Osamu suggested for dinner, reaching out to grab the other person's hand. Yakimaru, let me tell you some good news. I'm not in a rush anymore. Mori-san agreed to give me some time off to find. Yakimaru, dressed in a black yukata, walked toward him as usual, as if in the next moment, his eyes would reflect Dazai's figure, radiating a light that had been refined through human experience. Yakimaru glanced at him briefly and continued searching. Dazai-Osamu's hand froze mid-air, his fingertips trembling, his expression dazed. He had been avoided. Chapter 37 End. Chapter 38, Everyone returns home. When Dazai-Osamu silently turned around after a brief pause, he saw Yakimaru walking farther and farther away. His throat was blocked. Unable to breathe. It felt suffocating. His mind briefly blanked out, gradually returning to normal, as if the cries for help and the desperate screams from the life organs inside his body were all illusions, pulled back to reality by the murky waters he had been drowning in. Ah, this is reality. He heard himself sounding extremely cowardly, speaking in a trembling, weakened voice. Maru. Turn around. Who are you looking for? Aren't you looking for Dororo? Didn't you say you liked me? Why can't you see me? In just 3 days, he dismantled the sheep organization, and in 9 days, he destroyed the GSS organization. The new member of the mafia, still youthful in appearance, had all the color drained from his face, and the light in his pupils extinguished. His soul was entangled in sin, with hundreds of lives lost, destroying that precious pure white humanity within him. Darkness, bloodstains. His hands weren't dirty, but his heart could never be clean. Suddenly, Dazai-Osamu understood why the Yakimaru from the parallel world did not recognize him. He laughed out loud. At his own foolish and ridiculous realization. Because of the killings committed by the Suribachi street villains and the mafia group, he arrogantly believed that as long as he didn't kill anyone, it wouldn't be a problem. And due to Yakimaru's changing attitude towards Mori-san and Nakahara Chuya, he grew complacent, thinking that no matter what form he took, he would still be recognized. At worst, he would find a way for Yakimaru to forgive him. Why could Chuya, who had killed people, be treated with tolerance, and he himself couldn't receive special treatment from the other person? What is the result? Always claiming to like him, yet unable to recognize him when he comes, he hadn't even discarded the other person, yet he himself had already been thrown aside like a broken, senseless puppet. What's wrong with this world? Not hesitating to prolong a painful life, striving to pursue something. It's all the same, none of it exists. The wind blew along the riverbank, and a clean and fresh white-shirt boy walked in the opposite direction of his steps, slowly making his way back. His half-dried hair, the new bandages stained with blood seeping from his skin, everything was still just the same as before. At the Port Mafia headquarters, amidst the busyness, Mori Ogai looked toward the young man in black approaching alone. He set down his pen, smiling at Dazai-Osamu as his mentor. Welcome back. Both understood clearly in their hearts. The thick darkness devoured the faint trace of light in Dazai-Osamu, a chaotic, inherently evil youth, indifferent to killing, indifferent to saving, pursuing only what piqued his interest. Dazai-kun, I forgot to tell you something, I actually haven't killed many people. But Yaki-kun is someone who believes in the law of karma. Where there is no direct act of killing, it doesn't mean it's not a killing crime. The law does not allow for this distinction. Incitement to murder is on the same level as the crime of murder itself, though the former is harder to get caught for than the latter. Dazai-Osamu said nothing, and Mori Ogai no longer pressured him to abandon that portion of his feelings. Do you need something from me, Dazai-kun? Give me a new place, I don't want to go back to the clinic. What the other said made Mori Ogai raise an eyebrow, attempting to ask, how about staying at the Port Mafia? Dazai-Osamu calmly replied, that works. 20 minutes later. Mori Ogai learned that his clinic had been sealed, the medical equipment was damaged, and it would be impossible to return to normal business for a while. Mori Ogai lamented, once again, earning money had become top priority. When Dazai-kun wants to be vicious, he's truly going to be vicious. He's the type who would rather vent everything than keep it bottled up inside. Sigh, back to eating instant noodles. Could the world ever find a leader more impoverished and disappointed than him? Yakimaru spent the day searching outside and returned to the clinic at dusk. What used to be an easily opened door was now tightly stuck. Yakimaru, with his considerable strength, tried multiple times and finally forced it open. As he entered, he almost slipped. An empty bottle was left on the floor in his path. The clinic was in disarray, with various bottles and jars scattered around, a sign of compulsive behavior. There were footprints on the medicine chest, and all the medical equipment had been rendered unusable, with power lines cut or critical components removed. This left Mori Ogai, who is part-timing as the leader of the port mafia, too lazy to even bother fixing it, deciding instead to embezzle funds and place an order for a batch of the latest medical equipment. Dororo. Yakimaru let out an uncertain sound, his eyes moving with a mechanical emptiness. There was no sight of a life flame filled with sin, nor a pure white life flame, which meant that the two still hadn't returned. Such a situation had occurred a few times before. The father and daughter were both busy and sometimes they stayed out overnight. For example, Dororo didn't come back last night, which was rare. It was Dororo's father who ate with him, using this method to keep him from worrying about the other's condition. Who knows how messy the clinic was, but Yakimaru anxiously swept his gaze over the lifeless shadows, walking towards the room where he resided, patiently waiting for Dororo to return and eat with him. At this moment, the quiet of late night had arrived. There were no longer any passers-by outside, and those seeking a doctor, upon seeing the windows sealed, turned back. Yakimaru was hungry. He was demanded by Dororo to eat cooked food, and in order not to be disliked by her, he began to revive his old eating habits from his previous life, trying to live as if he were a normal person. Thus, after unknowingly going through a period of this, Yakimaru found some noodles. He realized he didn't know where the warm water was, didn't know how to light a fire in the room, and had no other method except eating it raw. Without complaining about the issue, he skillfully chewed the noodles, using this as his way to settle dinner. Afterward, he groped for the cup to drink water and drank the remaining half cup from the yesterday. A person living, a person in solitude, once again fiercely appeared. Dororo, when will you return? Yakimaru sat on the chair, his hand checking the bandages tied around his right thigh, making sure there were no external injuries. He hadn't changed the bandages in 2 days, always wanting to have Dororo change them for him. The reason was simple. Being accepted by the one you like feels like happiness. Even if Dororo thinks I don't know, always curiously poking at sensitive places, I can only pretend not to feel it, waiting until I regain my sense of touch to tell her that she can't do that. The slender 14-year-old boy, on one hand, looked forward to the future, and on the other, savored the bittersweet joy of solitude. The darkness became a little less unbearable. However, even by dawn, Yakimaru had not seen anyone return. He pushed the door open and stepped outside, continuing his day-to-day search, showing no interest in the impure life flames that once intrigued him. He only wanted to find Dororo. And so, he returned to the complex, layered streets of Suribachi, descending deeper into the area. Yakimaru's eyes could see the life flames of every living being, a type of life flame equivalent to the soul, allowing him to distinguish who had a corrupt heart and was an evildoer, and who had never taken a life and was a good person. Through his experience surviving in chaotic times, he learned one thing: never trust those who have killed others, for they have already broken the fundamental boundary of life. At the corner of the clinic, Dazai-osamu leaned against the wall, standing in the shadow without uttering a word. After a long while, he simply commented on his own behavior with a single word, boring, and then left. Once. Twice. Could it be that he was about to give this person a third chance? Suribachi Street, Nakahara Chuya was grumbling as he heard that Yakimaru was here, then immediately set off to find that person. He was frustrated to find Yakimaru alone on Suribachi Street and asked, "Dazai shouldn't be busy?" Yakimaru's grayish-brown pupils focused on him, showing faint surprise, and he opened his mouth to ask this familiar person. "Dororo." You must be talking about Dazai, right? I don't have his phone number. Nakahara Chiya awkwardly realized he had no way to contact Dazai Osamu. The other party only kept a one-way communication with him, and after everything was done, he'd find himself discarded, his value squeezed dry. With a kind heart, he didn't want Yakimaru to keep searching aimlessly. Scratching his head, he said, "Come with me, I'll go ask the Port Mafia if he's there." Arriving at the entrance of the Port Mafia headquarters, Nakahara Chiya pulled Yakimaru along. The two teenagers, in contrast to the serious group of mafia members, seemed like a completely different style. He nervously inquired with one of the suited members at the door. "Excuse me, is Dazai Osamu inside?" "He's not here." Following orders, the Port Mafia member answered, sending the two of them away. Nakahara Chiya lifted his head to look at the 5 buildings of the Port Mafia. The reflective glass obscured the figures inside, making it impossible for him to know if Dazai Osamu was up there looking down. "Maybe he's just busy. You should wait a few more days." After a fruitless search, Nakahara Chiya offered this reassurance to Yakimaru, though he didn't believe Dazai Osamu could escape. That bastard had threatened him just a few days earlier not to lure Yakimaru away. Yakimaru's face remained expressionless, his brow furrowing slightly, revealing a hint of human-like emotion. Could Dororo be hiding in the bandit's lair? He began to consider rushing in. Nakahara Chiya saw through his intentions and hurriedly intervened, pulling him away to a safer distance. "Don't provoke the Port Mafia, even if you are his friend, they will still treat you as an enemy." "But how can I see her?" Yakimaru's face was full of understanding yet thoughtful. "I'll keep an eye out for you. As soon as I see him, I'll drag him over to meet you," Nakahara Chiya replied decisively. That afternoon, Nakahara Chiya kept his promise, capturing a wildly struggling Dazai Osamu, ignoring his squirming and loud protests. "Shorty, what are you trying to do?" and forcibly escorted him over. Seeing that they were approaching the entrance to the clinic, Dazai Osamu gave up resisting and said, "Chiya, let go, I'm going to meet him." Nakahara Chiya, uninterested in meddling, responded, "Hurry up and go, he's dying to see you." Letting go of the collar, Nakahara Chiya felt like he had done a good deed for the day, and happily left. However, he didn't witness what happened next. Yakimaru leaned against the door, his expression vacant, but suddenly fixed his gaze in Dazai Osamu's direction. His face turned icy, and the atmosphere immediately filled with an indescribable sense of pressure and suffocating tension. A life flame burned in the heart, in his eyes, the gray flame tainted with a crimson glow. Did evil, he had killed. Dazai Osamu, in front of Nakahara Chiya, could still maintain a relaxed demeanor, breathing so lightly it was almost undetectable. Thinking that the little shorty hadn't gone far, he fidgeted, moving back and forth. "Yakimaru." Nakahara Chiya turned his head to glance at the two who had made peace, a smirk forming at the corner of his mouth. Dazai still kept his promise, not abandoning Yakimaru, or else he would intervene. Finally, Dazai Osamu stopped 3 meters away from Yakimaru, his neck pressed against the sharp blade of the katana. He seemed like someone offering his neck for execution. "Do you want to kill me?" Dazai Osamu, unsurprised by the outcome, responded with words welcoming death. "This person is getting too close." Yakimaru didn't waver in his killing intent, his eyes constantly searching for Dororo's life flame, feeling repulsed by the flame of evil so near to him. Especially since this person had come with the color-changing demon god's human host. At first, Yakimaru had not clearly seen the other's life flame, mistaking him for Dororo. This person was about the same height as Dororo, but had committed heinous acts and had killed many people. Yet, he didn't want to raise his hand against someone who might not be too different from Dororo. The world is incapable of treating people gently, and what a person can do is protect the fundamental boundaries of conscience. Yakimaru rejected this dangerous figure from approaching him. "Get lost." Dazai Osamu observed him. Yakimaru stood guard at the clinic's door, as if protecting his home. The truly sad thing was that there was no one inside the clinic behind him. Who was Yakimaru protecting? A great surge of anger swept through him. Dazai Osamu clenched his fists, tearing open the outer layer of trust, revealing how unbearable the blow within was. Ozaki Koyo told him to cherish this trust, and he did, only to be met with Yakimaru's unfamiliar attitude. Does he not resemble the Dororo in Yakimaru's heart even a little? A sentence spun in his mind, one that made him want to kill the moment he spoke it. What do you take me for? Dazai Osamu was not a kind, innocent person. Yakimaru couldn't see him clearly, so why did he still want to like him? Dazai Osamu pushed away the katana, disregarding the sharp edge, and coldly said, "Today, I absolutely must enter the clinic behind you. You can try killing me if you want. You can't enter. This is Dororo's home. You need Dororo and Dororo's father's permission to enter." Yakimaru, having been pushed to his limit by this person, unleashed a killing intent like that of a wild beast. Just as Yakimaru was about to strike Dazai Osamu, in that split second, a sharp, nerve-tingling cat's meow echoed from the rooftop. Dazai Osamu's body stiffened, and his gaze shifted toward the clinic's eaves. A calico cat leaped down from the roof, flicking its long tail lazily as if the terrifying sound just now hadn't come from it. Soon after, a few stray cats that followed the cat boss emerged from behind it. Those cats didn't dare approach Yakimaru and Dazai Osamu below, squatting in a line as if they were watching a human spectacle. He felt strangely looked down upon by the cats. Dazai Osamu immediately pierced through the extreme self-destructive emotions, stopped in his tracks, and looked once more at Yakimaru, whose appearance he loved like an illusion, losing the desire to mutter or speak. You can just slowly wait for a lifetime. Yakimaru warily watched this life flame, not approaching, seemingly giving up on entering. In his spiritual world, he sees the other person decisively and smoothly walking away. Gone. Yakimaru adjusted his arm back to the elbow joint. After standing for a while, he squatted down. After Nakahara Chuya exhausted all methods to express to him the intention of bringing Dororo here, Yakimaru finally managed to understand, waiting at the door from morning until afternoon, simply wanting Dororo to see him first. His right leg became somewhat difficult to support, likely due to muscle and nerve fatigue. It didn't matter, his stamina was stronger than the average person's. If he continued to wait, and if food ran low, he could go outside and catch fish. If water was insufficient, he could easily find a river to quench his thirst. The most basic level of survival wasn't difficult for him. The calico cat jumped down from the eaves, its tail raised high. Its deep, bright eyes, under the sunlight with no shadows, contracted into vertical slits as it lifted its head to observe the two-legged animal known as human. Sigh, can this kid not even recognize his own friends? Natsume Soseki's most feared situation had occurred, that boy had been led toward darkness by Mori Ogai. In a certain sense, Yakimaru was too pure. So pure that his world couldn't tolerate even a trace of impurity. If it wasn't black, it was white, if it wasn't good, it was bad. This outlook protected him and allowed him to survive, yet it also made it impossible for those tainted by darkness to approach him. Natsume Soseki turned into a calico cat, circling halfway around him, pondering the solution. On the other hand, stray cats, seeing his actions, enthusiastically ran over, surrounding Yakimaru. Yakimaru, trapped in a waiting predicament, noticed one pure white little life after another, and a serene, gentle expression appeared on his face, as if he were in a paradisiacal place beyond the future, completely disconnected from any human conflicts. Yakimaru's world is very small, safe yet narrow, containing only Jukai and Dororo. At the same time, his world was very large. Large to the point that he knows the Transmigration department, understanding many worlds. After transmigrating, in order to fulfill his role-playing mission, from birth he had used every effort in honing himself. Dororo likes small animals, right? Yakimaru gently stroked the small animals surrounding him, his heart that had been closed now opened for the two most important people. That person just now was so fierce, could he really not be afraid that I might cut him down? Subconsciously, Yakimaru felt certain it was not a young girl. No young girl in chaotic times would face a man holding a weapon head-on, ignoring the sword in his hand and still wanting to enter the room. Dororo. Where are you? Why can't I see you? Days passed, and Yakimaru found very little food. There weren't many fish in the river, and they weren't large either. Being at an age where he could eat an entire horse, he needed more. To save time outdoors, he would usually eat something simple and return, especially at night when he couldn't see any passers-by. He would quietly stay by the clinic's entrance, watching the crowd. During his search, Yakimaru once again encountered the pure white soul of a kind person. He tried to express his plea for help. Oda Sakunosuke truly couldn't read the inner thoughts from the indifferent expression on his face. After hesitating for a moment, he still thought of a way to communicate with the boy. He remembered that recently, he always saw this boy fishing in the river for food or drinking the river water. The water pollution in Yokohama was somewhat serious, and doing that would upset his stomach. Do you have any belongings? I can help you find an acquaintance. I have a book. Under Oda's friendliness and patience, Yakimaru nervously took out the book from his chest. Oda Sakunosuke picked up the copy of The Complete Suicide, flipped through it, and determined that it was an item left behind for the black-haired boy beside him because, on the first page, there was a phone number that could be called if found. Oda Sakunosuke dialed the number. Hello, a boy has gone missing here, and he has your contact information. May I ask if you... Before he could finish speaking, a cold voice responded. Don't know. Beep beep. The call was abruptly cut off. Oda Sakunosuke. On Yakimaru, who was now a bit dirty, Oda Sakunosuke, feeling some pangs of conscience, organized his thoughts and dialed the phone again. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. There's a young man by the river who is about to die, may I ask? The phone emitted a continuous silence. After a moment, a voice that didn't sound very old on the other end said, Sir, don't meddle in other people's affairs. He not only has a strong life force but also exceptional survival skills. It's not your place, as a stranger, to worry about him. Oda Sakunosuke didn't want to listen anymore and said seriously but with exaggeration, You know him. The other side didn't want to respond. Oda Sakunosuke had no choice but to say, he seems to be looking for someone called Dororo. A bang sound rang out. It seemed like he heard the phone being violently knocked to the ground, causing his eyelid to twitch. Fortunately, the other person's phone was of good quality, and despite the interruption, the call was still connected. Oda Sakunosuke breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the call was still ongoing, it was fine. Immediately after, he heard the other person coldly say, The phone accidentally made intimate contact with the wall, making you wait for a long time, sir. The following sentence was, This person is already dead, asking further is only for burial. The call was cut off. Chapter 38 End. Chapter 39, Meeting on a Rainy Day. Can this kind-hearted person help me find Dororo? Yakimaru rarely handed over the book to strangers. On the few occasions he did, it was always after repeatedly confirming that the other person's soul was pure and had not done anything bad. Especially after so many days without seeing Dororo, the unease of losing someone important surrounded him, and he could not bear to lose the last thing he had. His first impression of Oda Sakunosuke was quite good. The other man was tall, a head taller than him, and the white flame of his life burned steadily. His vitality was full, not the kind that was in a sickly state. Is he a samurai? Or a nobleman? Based on Yakimaru's rough impression of ancient Japan, someone as tall as him must certainly have no worries about food or clothing. This kind of person is either the bottom feeder or has realized from the chaos of the world how difficult survival is. Labeled with the title of samurai or nobleman, Oda Sakunosuke was actually just an ordinary passerby. He had short reddish-brown hair, a young face with an indifference that didn't match his age, and a light-colored coat paired with a gray shirt. He had the kind of appearance that wouldn't stand out in a crowd. However, it was precisely this unremarkable person whose soul radiated kindness toward Yakimaru. He stood in front of the black-haired boy, staring gloomily at his phone, realizing for the third time that the number had been blocked. "Your friend had an argument with you?" Oda Sakunosuke returned the book to him, personally witnessing how much the other person cherished it as he placed it inside his kimono. Even though the other's bandages were soiled and the outer layer of the kimono was covered in dust, the book remained spotless. From this young man, Oda Sakunosuke sensed a purity long forgotten. It wasn't the kind of purity born from ignorance of the world, but rather a purity maintained while wandering in the city's forgotten corners. He neither stole nor robbed, neither cried nor made a fuss, making Oda associate him with the mirror that reflects the bright side of humanity. Yakimaru had gotten used to people talking to him, and he would automatically interpret the other person's words as if they were speaking into thin air. Useless. He couldn't hear, couldn't see himself, and there were too few ways to communicate with the outside world. Not everyone is like Father Dororo, or the color-changing demon god's human host, with enough patience, willing to expend a great deal of effort on a blind and deaf person, trying to understand what they meant. He slightly lowered his head and turned in the opposite direction from Oda Sakunosuke. After finishing the meal, it was time to return. Oda Sakunosuke didn't call him back. Doing good deeds was just like that. If he could help, he would lend a hand. If he couldn't, there was no need to feel guilty. A person's strength is limited, it's enough to do what is within one's ability. Though saying this, Oda Sakunosuke spoke in a low voice. "You can't hear, huh?" He could understand a person being deaf, but what he couldn't comprehend was the black-haired boy's gaze. Having been an assassin, he was particularly sensitive to people's eyes, yet the other's gray-brown eyes were filled with emptiness. They were like a pair of empty hands, yet at the same time, it felt as though they could see through his soul, making one pause in awe. The person on the phone wasn't entirely wrong. His survival ability was incredibly strong, and there was no need for a stranger like him to worry. To participate in the life of someone whose body was broken would require constant kindness, which wasn't something so simple. He wasn't capable of offering help to someone without being prepared and then walking away, because that would be more cruel than neglect. Oda Sakunosuke thought about his dried-up wallet and sighed. Ever since the new boss took over, the wages of the port mafia's lower ranks have become really low. Every day I have to save a little, and at most, I can only afford 2 curry meals a day. He raised his head to look at the sky. It seems like it's going to rain today. I forgot to bring an umbrella. That boy should be fine. By now, he should have returned to his place of residence. He walked toward the port mafia, suppressing his emotions, blending in naturally with the lower-tier staff. Everyone has their own life. Yakimaru returned to the clinic. No one had come by. On the clinic's door was a notice Yakimaru couldn't see, which read, "Clinic closed due to poor business, shutting down." Yakimaru squatted at the door, his arms wrapped around his knees, burying his head between them, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. His high ponytail revealed a portion of his neck, which was not covered by bandages. The exposed skin invited infection, and at every moment, the illusionist ability shielded him from external bacterial infection. In this regard, Rokudo Mukuro could be considered a rare, good person. Rokudo Mukuro himself was captured by the Vecteezy and imprisoned in the dark water prison. His limbs were immobile, his body injected with a paralyzing neurotoxin, and even his eye of the 6 paths of reincarnation was covered and suppressed by a special device. His greatest pleasure each day was watching the outside world. He compares himself to Yakimaru, but he is more fortunate because he is an illusionist, able to gain an external view through a false contract. In other words, Rokudo Mukuro is actually the person who understands Yakimaru's current state the most, becoming more and more shocked by the latter's survival abilities with each encounter. Although he hasn't communicated with the ignorant Yakimaru, he frequently sees the world through the other's eyes, constantly marveling at this world filled only with darkness and the flame of life. Kufu, Fu. In a bottomless underwater prison, beneath a foreign prison annually covered in snow. The blue-haired boy, bound by chains, closed his eyes, lowering half of his face into the obstructing blanket, as if he were in a deep sleep, floating in the water. The illusionist is a profession that relies on spiritual strength and willpower. He had absorbed precious survival motivation from Yakimaru, gaining further insight and understanding of the mind's eye. As long as his spiritual strength continued to grow, sooner or later, he would become an illusionist feared by the Vindici. All the hardships that didn't defeat him would become stepping stones for his strength. Yakimaru's example motivated Rokudo Mukuro. At this point, I want to thank him, surpassing human beings. Willpower. The contractor I can't control. No, good. I still need to find another suitable long-term host for the contract. Over there. A place of spiritual connection, is it Japan? Oh, I see. There's one. Because of a car accident, she lost her organs. A little girl missing her right eye. The parents don't want treatment. Kufu. Humans always repeat similar things. As parents, to abandon their child. Truly pitiful and infuriating. Rokudo Mukuro, in the spiritual world, walked slowly and encountered a girl from the future who had changed her name to Chrome Dokuro. It was like Yakimaru meeting Dororo. In the depths of despair, the one who can save you is the most unique beam of light in your life. At the Port Mafia's headquarters, Dazai Osamu occupied a solitary room on the top floor. As a student of Mori Ogai and a newly established figure with great achievements, he held a high starting point, commanding a guerrilla team entrusted to him by Mori Ogai, and he didn't need to struggle from the bottom like ordinary people. The curtain in the room was pulled up, and faint traces of wear could be seen on the delicate painting on the wall. Dazai Osamu lay on the sofa, holding the shattered screen of his phone between two fingers, raising it before his eyes. The dim light from the phone illuminated his face, casting alternating shadows of cold light. On the screen, a motionless red dot was displayed, stopping at an unmarked clinic on the map. In the lower right corner of the map, there was a number from an infrared body temperature check, 36 degrees Celsius, normal temperature. Just one click to open this surveillance button, and it can even open the surveillance cameras around the clinic. How could the Port Mafia boss's favorite place be missing these devices? Titch. Dazai Osamu didn't check the surveillance cameras, nor did he bother to seal the clinic with cement, out of respect. He left one place of residence, and as for the rest, let him deal with it himself. Aren't you a follower? He ignored the intense negative emotions he felt when he heard Dororo. Yakimaru could survive on his own without him, he was just playing the role of a temporary companion. Outside the door, Hiratsu Yuro, a veteran member of the Port Mafia, knocked twice. Come in. Dazai Osamu put away his phone. Dazai-san, the boss instructed me to bring you to meet the organization's members. With graying hair, Hiratsu Yuro respectfully spoke, resembling more of an elderly gentleman in a cafe. Hiratsu-san, the first time we met, I said there was no need for honorifics. I just joined the Port Mafia, and there are many things I want to ask my senior. Dazai Osamu, standing in a dimly lit area where his face was barely visible, spoke in a relaxed, youthful tone with a slight smile. However, I'm not in the mood to meet them today. Please come again tomorrow. Hiratsu Yuro nodded, not correcting himself. Good, please rest assured, Dazai-san. He knew that Dazai Osamu was on leave and dared not take lightly this young man brought in by the leader. The other had been involved in the Port Mafia's leadership transition, not only emerging unscathed but also becoming the current leader's favored candidate. How many 14-year-old boys could pull that off with such calm composure? As he was closing the door, Hiratsu Yuro couldn't help but glance inside out of the corner of his eye. Dazai Osamu sat up on the sofa, his expression cold and indifferent in the darkness. His gaze briefly swept over the narrow slit of light between the curtains, and just that one glance sent chills through Hiratsu Yuro, who had seen countless things in his life. Fortunately, before Dazai Osamu could turn his head, Hiratsu Yuro had already closed the door, silently sweating. Youths these days. Ah. Outside, the sky finally showed signs of rain. The sunlight could no longer penetrate through the curtains, and the weak light in the gap gradually faded from his sight, retreating to the world outside the window. Dazai-Osamu's eyes held nothing, as he listened to the faint sound of rain falling outside. A flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by the distant rumble of thunder. The strong wind mixed with rain blew one corner of the curtains aside, revealing that he hadn't closed the window. "It's raining." He noticed the dampness in the air, so subtle it was almost undetectable, and murmured to himself. The rain couldn't wash away the restlessness in his heart. The Port Mafia's old building stood for years, washed clean by the falling rain. The cityscape stretched up into the sky, differing from the vibrant splendor of a bustling city under the bright sunlight. Gloom shrouded the city, with torrential rain pouring down like a photograph drained of color, and even the neon lights, though brilliant, could not illuminate the entire city. Yakimaru couldn't hear the sound of the rain hitting the ground, but he felt his stomach churn. An hour passed, and he was hungry again. The black-haired boy, unwilling to leave, persistently guarded the door of the clinic. Rainwater fell from the eaves, avoiding him, but the strong wind blew it back, wetting the bandages on his right leg and his shoes. Hungry. His inner world was quiet, with only a slight ripple stirred by hunger. From deep within the chaotic alley, a calico cat, clutching something in its mouth, skillfully dashed forward, leaping over puddles and avoiding the rain, and arrived before Yakimaru. It shook its wet fur in discomfort and dropped the bag containing bread from its mouth, a trace of human-like helplessness appearing on its face. If someone could read the inner thoughts of the calico cat, they would hear the usually prideful and tsundere cat boss letting out a sigh. This old man has never seen someone having a cat feed them. During this period, whenever Natsume Soseki had free time, he would visit Yakimaru to check on how the latter was living. He broke away from his usual bystander's stance and, in human form, went to a store to buy bread. However, a sudden downpour interrupted his plans, and out of concern for the child's situation, he quickly rushed back. Meow. The calico cat let out a sound, using its little paw that a certain disciple wanted to pet to nudge Yakimaru. At that moment, the cat and the human connected. Yakimaru's body twitched slightly, lifting his face from his knees. Then, without any reaction to the strange occurrence, he went ahead and ate the food the calico cat had given him. An animal feeding me? A child of the heavens. I didn't expect to have such fortune even after subjugating the demon god. Automatically accepting the role of the child of the heavens, Yakimaru's adaptability to the world remained exceptional, well deserving of being the top trainee among the 100 transmigrators. Nothing ever felt strange to him, no matter the setting. He had seen even more bizarre scenarios. At one point, the calico cat went to great lengths to stop him from eating the plastic bag, and afterward, it even took charge of picking up the packaged bag and dropping it into a flip-top trash can. Yakimaru hugged his knees with one arm while the other was reserved specifically to pet its head. Calico cat. I really didn't want to be touched by a junior, fine. The rain was falling heavier and heavier, and outside, the wind whistled through the narrow alleys and gaps, making eerie sounds. The calico cat, not at all disliking the dirtiness, and bit Yakimaru's sleeve, tugging him in the direction of the clinic's main door. Child, come inside. Natsume Soseki had no descendants, so he poured his feelings into this country and city. He thought if he had a grandson, stubborn and endearing like Yakimaru, he certainly wouldn't have the heart to scold him. He would just hope the boy could quickly taste the warmth and genuine affection of the world. Yakimaru did not change his determination to stay here. The calico cat's strength was much smaller compared to his. He had no one to talk to, so he spoke to the calico cat. Dororo. Meow. Do-ro-ro. Wait. In the world of the black-haired boy, there was no storm, no cold, yet he endured an indescribable loneliness. He was truly grateful for this little animal coming to accompany him. The small figure trembled slightly when being touched, filled with the lively life flame moving forward, warm and kind. Indeed, this was the only color in many years that could give Yakimaru a sense of peace. The system reminded him that he still had 2 years left, and only after those 2 years would the plot officially begin. He felt fortunate to have encountered Dororo first, indulging in the unknown events that occurred along the way. He also willingly believed that after resolving those unforeseen incidents, Dororo would return to meet him. Because, after all, they were destined to meet. Fate brought Dororo to his side, waiting for him to open his eyes and see her. Yakimaru's unique voice made the calico cat freeze, and then its tail drooped. You can't recognize your Dororo. The sorrow of encountering each other without knowing. Natsume Soseki never thought that in his lifetime, he would meet such a person, a boy with many missing body parts, and a grand disciple who kills to save. That's right, Mori Ogai was Natsume Soseki's student, and Dazai Osamu was Mori Ogai's student. With such a lineage of 3 generations of teacher-student relationships, Dazai Osamu could be said to share a bit of a connection with him. At this moment, Natsume Soseki could only think of raising his gentleman's cane and knocking it over Mori Ogai's head. How could you treat children like this? First, Yosano Akiko was left with psychological trauma by Mori Ogai, her spirit broken. Then, Dazai Osamu was led into darkness by Mori Ogai, losing his only friend, Yakimaru. Though it was all done to protect their country and city, the ones sacrificed in the process were always others. The calico cat suddenly let out a meow and jumped from Yakimaru's hand, leaping to a higher spot. The heavy rain masked the sound of footsteps. In front of the clinic, Yakimaru stood under the eaves, unable to avoid the rain. His clothes were more than half soaked, and the complete suicide was placed on his abdomen, completely protected. He belatedly noticed and pinched his wet sleeve, took out the red leather book, and placed it in a dry spot behind him, then casually sat there. He quietly looked at the rain-soaked world, experiencing a unique non-human sensation. The illusion covering him unconsciously strengthened a bit, shielding him from the rain. Yakimaru, having not yet fulfilled his destiny, remains isolated from the world, and this world also hides him safely in a corner. Not far from that place, Dazai Osamu, dressed in a suit with a black coat, stood there. At times, he seemed frighteningly mature, and at other times, as frail as a child who hadn't grown up. He used his sharp mind to disguise himself, shielding himself against the harms of the outside world. He let the heavy rain drench him at will, the bandage over his right eye soaked by the rain, with streams of water continually running down. Yet the flame of his life always emitted a deep red glow, while layers of sin trapped his gray soul within. Hundreds of lives, reprimanded Dazai Osamu in such a way, staining his life flame. Good and evil in people both exist. No one on either side cared about those destined to be abandoned by both blacks and whites. The 4th time, seeing this person. Yakimaru didn't want to see anyone outside of Dororo. His eyes barely moved, and he buried his face back into his knees. Does he know Dororo? But from what he's seen, this person is completely the type that deserves to die 1,000 times over. Good people have 1,000 reasons to do evil yet do not, while evil people have 10,000 excuses to commit evil when there's no need. This person's heart no longer holds any conscience. Dazai Osamu stood in the rain, looking at him. Yakimaru did not lift his head, and neither of them knew who had been abandoned first. Rainwater dripped continuously from Dazai Osamu's hair. It seemed as if he were crying. But Yakimaru, oblivious to such expressions, did not know. Dazai Osamu did not need him to know. A puppet has no vision, and in concealing himself, he had lost meaning, now able to strip away layer after layer of disguise. Yakimaru had been waiting for Dororo for half a month, yet he hadn't realized that Dororo had been right in front of him all along. His Dororo had tracked down a method for his cure, contacting people they fundamentally didn't know, and to obtain the funds and information for the cure, had become an undercover agent for the special division in the Port Mafia, operating in the shadows. Go to the clinic. You, with that pitiful abandoned look, just like a stray dog. Who are you showing this to? Dazai Osamu wanted to borrow life, but not like this. His puppet should have become a living, breathing person, who could cry and laugh, someone who, even in a limited, illusory world, wanted to survive, a person truly opposite to him in every sense. Why must you wait for me? Why do you hold on to me, only to push me away? The Dororo you know. Even if he stepped into darkness, he wouldn't hurt you, you fool. Chapter 39 End. Chapter 40, Unexpected. Hey, are you the kind-hearted person from before? May I ask who you are? There's someone here caught in the rain, refusing to go inside. The address has been sent to your phone. Wait, aren't you someone he knows? Don't know. Dazai-Osamu repeated what he had said before. His indifferent voice, mixed with the heavy rain, sounded somewhat unclear, making Oda Sakanosuke unable to discern who exactly was the person caught in the rain. He doesn't know me. Protecting Yakimaru's spiritual eye that could distinguish good and evil, cutting open the distance between them. And the person named Dazai-Osamu is just a coward, lacking the courage to step forward. Sharp blades will only make him taste the bitterness, as the black-haired puppet youth wordlessly forces him to recognize one thing: the other party is not anyone's possession. Those with goodwill will receive his kindness, and those with malice will be driven away. Dazai-Osamu does not regret plotting against the GSS organization, nor does he regret causing so many people to die. He just once again feels his own filth. Oda Sakanosuke found an excuse to ask for leave. By the time he stepped out in his raincoat, the rain had somewhat eased, though the weather forecast indicated it would continue through the night. He didn't hesitate after the phone call, tightened his raincoat, and ran toward the address given over the phone. It was a clinic near Suribachi Street, rumored to specialize in treating those without official residency. Upon arriving, Oda Sakanosuke, without a word, grabbed Yakimaru's right arm, who was sitting on the ground. Seeing Yakimaru's seemingly dazed yet indifferent expression, he simply said, "Come inside to take shelter from the rain." The ponytailed teenager had successfully transformed into a chicken that fell into the soup pot, with water all over his face, looking as pitiful as one could be. Even so, Yakimaru didn't forget to point to the book. Oda Sakanosuke wiped his hands dry on his clothes before grabbing the protected red-bound book. A notice was posted on the clinic door, which wasn't locked. A push opened it. Oda Sakanosuke slightly furrowed his brow and cautiously called out, "Sorry to intrude." As his voice sounded, a ceiling-mounted surveillance camera shifted to focus on him, as if silently giving him permission to enter. Oda Sakanosuke noticed that the clinic inside was not as chaotic as he had imagined. Various items, large and small, were piled up against the walls on both sides, with no signs of theft. Clearly, the owner of the clinic had prepared for some level of threat. Medicines and medical tools are things that ordinary people couldn't easily obtain. Oda Sakanosuke removed his raincoat and placed it in the corner, then found a towel to help Yakimaru dry his hair and face, completely unaware that he had just entered the den of the port mafia boss. The towel brushed past his eyes at that moment, and the other person didn't even blink, which made Oda Sakanosuke freeze. Yakimaru remained quietly silent. Afterward, Oda Sakanosuke acted as if he hadn't noticed anything, but his gaze toward Yakimaru became even gentler. When wiping Yakimaru's hands and feet, he was careful to the utmost degree. He didn't mind taking care of this person without any compensation, nor did he care about the other's past. Just like that voice on the phone addressed him, he was willing to be an ordinary, kind-hearted person. However, he still had to face the surveillance camera and say, "Don't casually find a stranger, the safety is too low. I suggest, if you have the money, hire a nanny to take care of him." Surveillance camera. According to his assumption, Yakimaru's guardian, or close relative, probably isn't poor. Once this clinic opens for business, it would earn real money. Yakimaru didn't know what he was doing, but he always looked towards the door, his gaze then shifting to him, thinking sluggishly, "Dororo hasn't come back. Could this person be someone Dororo found to take care of me?" He wasn't stupid. You don't just run into a stranger on the street and then encounter them again so soon after parting ways. Someone like him would make ordinary people feel scared, not daring to get too close. Even those kind-hearted enough to help him wouldn't repeatedly warm their hearts only to meet cold indifference. "Dororo can't see me, is she worried about me?" Yakimaru reached out to touch Oda Sakanosuke's towel, drawing the other's concern. Is something wrong? Yakimaru opened his mouth. Wait. Dororo. Oda Sakanosuke said sorrowfully, I don't know who this Dororo you're talking about is. The person answering the phone sounded angry. I think he still cared about you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked a stranger like me for help. Oda Sakanosuke's hand naturally reached out to touch Yakimaru's head, undoing the hair tie. Modern Japanese men rarely keep long hair. The other's drenched, tangled long hair fell, his skin pale, delicate to the point of resembling a young girl. Yet, there was still an air of determination and fierce resilience, a lone wolf's aura emanating from him. Lone wolf, huh? Oda Sakanosuke once met a similar senior, except that senior was not alone. By his side was an extremely intelligent detective assistant, and the silver wolf sword was never swung for the sake of killing. Oda Sakanosuke said, let me wash your head, it's a bit dirty. After preparing hot water, he brought over a basin. He gently pressed Yakimaru's head down, and as Yakimaru looked on in confusion, the warm water soaked his hair. The act of massaging his scalp brought back memories of when his foster father, Jukai, helped him wash his hair. Is he a good person like father? This world, if everyone were as gentle and kind as Jukai, it would be a beautiful place. Yakimaru closed his spiritual eyes. At this moment, there is no need to doubt, human souls do not lie. Oda Sakanosuke, once an assassin, later stopped killing entirely and joined the port mafia through normal means. His greatest wish was to find a stable job, occasionally help others, do good deeds, and, when inspiration struck, write a novel to fulfill his dream of becoming a writer. Port Mafia Headquarters. The document of this 19-year-old youth was placed on the table. Dazai-Osamu sneezed while locking himself under a fur blanket, as the phone screen played the surveillance video from the clinic. An assassin, of all things. Dazai-Osamu thought he had found a well-meaning citizen, but it turned out to be a port mafia member. He was surprised for a second. Yakimaru's actions were all based on karma, there was no way the assassin could avoid it, no wait. Yakimaru's attitude towards Reborn last time was also subtly indifferent, as if he hadn't seen the number one hitman. Well, the Arcobaleno belonged to a special case, so they couldn't be judged like ordinary people. But this person was truly a genuine assassin, yet after joining the port mafia, he hadn't killed another person. Could it be that by not killing, one could cleanse oneself? The answer was right in front of him, just lacking someone to experiment on. But could he really wait that long? Dazai-Osamu leaned on the table, watching the surveillance video, his cheeks flushed with a light feverish red. Observing, Yakimaru regained some clarity. Not being touched by his presence, the illusion that maintained his appearance was intact, not frightening this stranger. He could not see, hear, or speak a full sentence, but he was worth saving by many, with Dazai-Osamu being perhaps the least kind-hearted among them. Yakimaru. Don't call, there's no Dororo. Your Dororo is thinking of a way. Oh, my head is spinning. What does it feel like to be so uncomfortable that you want to die? Dazai-Osamu always thought he would die from boredom, but he underestimated the wonders of fate. During a moment of idle observation, he unexpectedly encountered someone who persistently and unwaveringly pursued the light. The loneliness inside him was a strange thing to befriend. He didn't need companionship, he was simply observing Yakimaru from the side. Yet, somehow, Yakimaru managed to catch him, slowly breaking down his distrust towards others. Sometimes, he wondered, if he hadn't brought this person out of the darkness, and if he had already died, would there be someone else who could restore Yakimaru completely and to good health, without asking for a high price in return? No, there wouldn't. Any form of illusion or replacement would demand an exorbitant price. The goodness he couldn't afford, the evil he didn't want to commit, only freedom beyond good and evil was something he could achieve. In the end, just like 10 years later, he would never dare to face Yakimaru again. Dazai-kun. If you're sick, you need to take your medicine. Lying on the table like this isn't good. Elise, go, get some water. Dazai Osamu, eyes burning so much he couldn't open them, vaguely heard a certain black-clad figure muttering. His body was turned over, and he irritably covered his ears, uncontrollably muttering, "Kill me, this is unbearable." The man paused, his voice carrying a hint of laughter as he said, "You're giving up on Yakimaru? If you don't want him, I'll send someone to take over. Do you think he might follow my orders because of Dororo?" Dazai Osamu remained silent, deep in thought. Right after, Mori Ogai ordered, "Elise, give him a shot in the butt." Dazai Osamu immediately jumped up, revived like the dead, and personally grabbed the syringe to inject it into his vein. Mori Ogai said, "Anyway, take a proper rest for me." He reached out to touch the child's forehead, checking the body temperature, then pressed the other down onto the bed and covered him with a light blanket. At 14 years old, the child still fell within his category of care. It wasn't time to exploit his labor just yet. After all, even the god of death wouldn't mistreat a child lost in the realm between life and death. Everything can be dealt with once you wake up. Dazai Osamu's scattered memories lingered on Mori Ogai's receding hairline. Mori-san is going bald soon. At dawn, Oda Sakanosuke, not accustomed to staying at others' homes, prepared to leave after taking good care of Yakimaru. In a flash faster than lightning, Yakimaru grabbed the hem of his coat. "Where is Dororo?" Oda Sakanosuke truly didn't know Dororo, feeling awkward. He looked at the black-haired boy sitting on the chair, helplessly dialing that number at dawn. "Hello, I'm the one you asked to take care of him." The person on the other end of the line changed. "Thank you, that child really worries everyone. I'm sorry to have troubled you to take care of him for so long." At this moment, a middle-aged man's voice appeared, sending an inexplicable chill down Oda Sakanosuke's spine. Why did this voice sound somewhat like the current leader of the Port Mafia? Oda Sakanosuke dismissed this possibility, thinking that the boss Mori wasn't the kind of person who spoke so pleasantly. He cautiously said, "No need to be polite. I want to ask if you know who Dororo is." The other person responded, "I do." Without giving Oda Sakanosuke the chance to ask more questions, the middle-aged man spoke in a helpless tone, "She is my daughter. Yaki-kun and she are deeply in love, but unfortunately, these two little ones are having a lover argument. Not only did she storm out of my clinic, but she also won't let me see Yaki-kun. So fierce, smashing your own clinic." This was Oda Sakanosuke's first impression of the girl's family. However, Yaki-kun has a friend on Suribachi Street named Nakahara Chuya, and he knows where Dororo is. Ahem, I can't say much more, please inform them for me. Also, it's getting late, I wish you the best of luck. I need to get back to work, providing for a family these days is no easy task. The conversation was interrupted by the person who called himself Dororo's father. Oda Sakanosuke was puzzled, feeling something was off, yet the other person spoke with sincere conviction. Afterward, Oda Sakanosuke obtained the address for Suribachi Street. Helpless, he had to bid farewell to Yakimaru, hurrying to Suribachi Street, searching for Yakimaru's friend, and requesting their assistance in taking care of this boy with missing body parts. Upon receiving the notification, Nakahara Chuya, in a fit of rage, almost smashed through the wall. "What did you say?" He raised his voice, not caring if he disturbed the neighbors. "I brought that blue mackerel there half a month ago, and that bastard left Yakimaru at the clinic, completely neglecting his care." Imagining how he had neglected Yakimaru for half a month, indirectly causing him to suffer waiting at the clinic door, surviving only on raw fish and murky river water each day, Nakahara Chuya felt his lungs about to explode with fury. His blue eyes burned with anger, and the deep red glow of his ability once again manifested around his body. Dazai Osamu. Oda Sakanosuke discreetly took a step back, finally recalling the identity of this furious young man. The gravity manipulator of Suribachi Street. Wait, who is Dazai Osamu anyway? Why does that name sound like the favored one by the Port Mafia boss? Oda Sakanosuke didn't think much before asking, "Can you help him find Dororo?" "Find Nakahara Chiya laughed in extreme anger, heading toward the outskirts of Suribachi Street, pulling down the brim of his hood. I will take him to find Dororo during the day, guaranteed to smash Dororo's skull right into the wall. So ruthless. Oda Sakamosuke could tell he wanted to vent his anger for his friend and tried to reason with him. That wouldn't be good for someone he likes, though. Nakahara Chiya calmly said, "It doesn't matter, if he's dead, I'll help him find a new one." Oda Sakamosuke. His mind wandered back to the first time he received the call when the other person said Dororo had already been buried. Whether it was true or not, by the time daylight came, he might already be buried. Not mentioning Oda Sakamosuke's confusion, Nakahara Chiya had already found Yakimaru, holding a large bag of food in his hand. "Eat until you're full, then get some sleep. I'll take you to find him during the day." Dororo. "No problem, I'll help you beat him into Daistars." Yakimaru, with the flame of life burning inside him, suddenly felt a strange sense of peace. "I will definitely be able to see her, right?" "Yes." Nakahara Chiya understood his plea, his blue eyes softened, and the anger toward Dazai Osamu was smoothed over by Yakimaru. He couldn't tolerate wickedness, nor could he allow Yakimaru to be bullied. Existence is not just for the sake of existing. After the morning's romantic rain, two people arrived in downtown Yokohama. Nakahara Chiya pulled Yakimaru along as they entered the Port Mafia's main entrance. He released his grip, cracking his knuckles, and the sound of bones echoed. The guards at the door watched the two with suspicion. Yakimaru's face was indifferent, while Nakahara Chiya's menacing expression clearly betrayed their intentions. Up in one of the buildings, Dazai Osamu reluctantly sat up, his bones weak, and his head dizzy. He tore off the fever patch from his forehead and reached over to grab the phone beside his pillow to check the surveillance video. The clinic desk was scattered with fallen packaged food bags. Huh? Did he also buy food? Dazai Osamu rubbed his temples lightly with his fingertips, leaning against the pillow, pondering whether the armed detective agency would accept custody service. He thought about sending Yakimaru, who could easily be taken by Mori-san, over to the other side. Edogawa Ranpo of the armed detective agency possessed the ability, super detective, so it was likely that without him saying anything, Ranpo would already understand his intentions. He couldn't drag this out any longer. The more he delayed, the more likely things would go wrong. He did not plan to abandon Yakimaru, nor did he want Yakimaru to misunderstand. The best method was to find a safe place, and then push him in that direction until he found someone who could treat Yakimaru. Dazai Osamu searched through his mind for Fukuzawa Yukichi's business card and called the president of the detective agency. "Hello, I'm Dazai Osamu." Not long after, Fukuzawa Yukichi's phone was snatched by Edogawa Ranpo, who cheerfully said, "You want to bring Yakimaru to us? Great idea. Hurry up." Dazai Osamu's smile froze, wondering why the other party was so actively enthusiastic. "He's just storing it. I'm not giving Yakimaru to you." Edogawa Ranpo casually said, "This great detective obviously knows what you're thinking, and I don't mind you turning the armed detective agency into an orphanage. As long as Yakimaru is willing to join the armed detective agency, both the president and I will find a way to connect with ability healers domestically and abroad." Dazai Osamu's face was expressionless, seemed like Ranpo had guessed his every move. Why did he feel an unusual sense of reluctance in his heart? After interacting with the others, especially Edogawa Ranpo, Yakimaru would gradually come to understand this world better, instead of staying outside the world like him, absorbing that trace of warmth amidst wandering. Alright. He couldn't be clean, so he will let Yakimaru interact with clean people. The sudden blaring of the alarm echoed sharply through the building. Dazai Osamu suddenly opened his sharp eyes and rushed toward the window, pulling aside the curtain to check the situation below. Suddenly, with his sharp eyesight, he noticed chaos breaking out in the lobby. "Someone has infiltrated the Port Mafia." A voice came from his phone. Edogawa Ranpo is mumbling, "What? He's coming for you." Inside the armed detective agency, in the president's office, a certain detective was slumped on the couch, not letting go of his phone, with a regretful expression. He was so close, just a little more and he could have snatched another member for the agency. If lucky, there could have been a buy one get one free deal. Ah, what a missed opportunity to boost recruitment. President Edogawa Ranpo, hands resting on the chair, looked expectantly at the silver-haired Fukuzawa Yukichi. Fukuzawa Yukichi, what's the matter? Edogawa Ranpo, seemingly wanting to stir up trouble, said, how about we head to the port mafia and steal someone? Fukuzawa Yukichi knocked him on the head, forcing the mischievous idea back. Everyone has their own choices. He listened to the entire conversation. He didn't possess the sharp, solitary minds of Dazai Osamu and Edogawa Ranpo, but he understood how to respect others' opinions more than these two unruly kids. Even if darkness lies ahead, then march forward without retreat, carving out a path of light. Justice and evil are of the man, not the deed. Port Mafia boss's office, Mori Ogai rested his chin on his hands, then pulled out the landline. That damn dwarf. Unable to reach the boss, Dazai Osamu slammed the phone down, feverish and frantic, before quickly dialing Nakahara Chiya's number. Not giving the other party a chance to speak, he said, take Yakimaru away. Without hesitation, Nakahara Chiya replied, you come down here. Dazai Osamu responded, do you plan to drag Yakimaru into the mafia? He doesn't belong here. Nakahara Chiya on the other side was throwing punches with the sound of flesh colliding, along with the clash of swords, making Dazai Osamu's scalp tingle as he deduced that golden demon Ozaki Koyo had come down. Nakahara Chiya arrogantly responded to him. Your thoughts are in disarray, Dazai Osamu, get down here and face me and Yakimaru. Otherwise, I'll bring Yakimaru up there to beat you. It's not that they don't care, or that they're mindless, but that they have enough belief in their survival. Dazai Osamu hung up the phone and covered his forehead, it must have been Mori-san who set me up. Taking advantage of my fever, he slipped some kind of sedative into my drink, making me completely unaware that Nakahara Chiya went to meet Yakimaru. No, wait, there's no way Mori-san would openly confront me like this. So, why would he do something like that? Those two don't meet on normal days, but at critical moments, they'll pull something super dramatic. Dazai Osamu decided to forget about it for now and put the blame squarely on Mori Ogai. However, Mori Ogai was also quite troubled. Mori Ogai bitterly laughed as he looked at the second letter in his hand, sent by Natsume Soseki. In the letter, the teacher severely criticized him, stating that there were problems with his education methods, and asked if he was planning to start over again. Natsume-sensei. I didn't intend to set them up. Sigh, why does no one believe me? In front of him, Elise burst out in laughter. The blonde-haired girl slammed the table and said, that's what you get for poaching what sensei had his sight on. Sure enough, you got scolded by him. The Port Mafia was now facing the greatest crisis since the change in leadership. They were being attacked right at their doorstep. Chapter 40 End.